Hi, I'm Alan Sagano. I'm the president of ADS Consulting Group, and thanks a lot for watching this presentation on disaster recovery. So we'll talk a little bit about why you need disaster recovery. We feel that every company should have some type of DR plan in place. We'll talk a little bit about recovery point objectives, or RPOs, as well as recovery time objectives. The real truth about disaster recovery, which is kind of scary, and kind of our process of how we fully vet the DR plan to make sure that it actually works. So that includes doing a bubble test, a non-bubble test, and a full DR site failover. So it should be pretty obvious why you need DR. So you can obviously recover gracefully from any disaster. It ensures business continuity. Avoid loss of business so that your competitors don't take away your customers or clients, damage reputation of the company, prove to your employees and your shareholders that you can gracefully and properly recover from any type of significant event. We support failing over to your own internal DR site. You can use our ADS Cloud as your DR target, or any third party as your DR target for failover and replication. So one of the key metrics that they always talk about with DR is a thing called recovery point objective, or RPO. And basically what that defines is how much data loss is acceptable, or data staleness you can accept, or the company can tolerate when you have to fail over to a DR site. Most companies have an RPO of 1 day. That's pretty typical. So in other words, they replicate to the DR site once a day. And you can also view my presentation on SimpliVity, but this is one of the amazing things with SimpliVity is we actually have clients that are actively replicating to their DR site with SimpliVity clusters in every 15 minutes. And the actual data, once the replication has started, it gets over to their DR site in about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. It is amazing. So for more information about SimpliVity, please see my presentation on SimpliVity hyperconverged architecture. The next thing that they often talk about is a thing called RTO, or recovery time objective, and this defines how quickly or how long it takes you to fail over from your production site to a DR site in the event of a major disaster. One of the things that we always suggest is that the decision to fail over or not to fail over to your DR site, we always feel should be a human involved decision and not an automated one. The main reason for that is because a human can always make a better informed, more intelligent decision to go no go for failing over or not to fail over than a computer can. So case in point, there was one company where a car hit a light post, the light post hit a power pole takes out all the power to their office, and they had an automated failover. So they were in the process of failing over, and then the power came on, and they were automated, so it started to fail over. The power came on, people started using files in the DR site and production, so then they had to take everybody out, reconcile it, take down the DR site, and then bring back up production. So instead of being down for a few hours, they ended up being down the entire day because they had to reconcile what was changed and who changed it. So we still feel that a failover should be a manual, human-involved decision. We're very strong believers in that. And we do have clients that can actually fail over to a DR site once the decision has been made to go no-go in less than an hour. And that includes everything. That includes updating all the routes, external things, lighting up the VMs and the DR site, the whole enchilada. The actual process of doing the failover and lighting up the VMs takes minutes, but the actual entire process often takes longer than a few minutes. So this is a scary truth about disaster recovery. The truth one is that companies just don't have a DR plan. If they have a DR plan, it's probably not updated, or it's significantly outdated. If they have an up-to-date plan, it's usually not tested. If they do test their DR plan, it's not tested often enough. If it is tested with some regularity, oftentimes it's not what we call a full valid test, which is a full failover from their production site to their DR site. So, and a lot of times companies just won't fail over to the DR site, run production for a while, fail back, and then reverse the replication flow and then fail back. It's very rare that we see companies do that. It's one of the things that we help companies do. We had a client that we were engaged with for DR testing and failover, and they had a valid question. They said, well, after we spend this money and investing in the infrastructure and stuff, how do we know that it actually works? And it's a valid question, and I told them this is what we're going to do. After we test the heck out of it, we are going to fail over to your DR site. We're going to run there for a week, and then we're going to fail back to your production site. And when that works, then there is absolute proof that the DR plan works. And I said, would you be satisfied with that if when we do that? And they said, absolutely. And that's exactly what we did. So we failed over, ran in their DR site for a week, and then failed back to their production the next week. And it worked. It worked really, really well. The reason why we're able to do that is we test the heck out of anything before we actually do any type of full-blown failover to DR site. And that begins with what we call a bubble test. And a bubble test basically will test replicated VMs in a protected bubble. And some of the benefits are it verifies that you have the correct VMs and that they're properly replicated, that the VMs can actually start so the replication is working properly, and the VMs can talk amongst each other. So it doesn't expose the VMs or the replicated VMs to the outside world. That's why we call it a bubble test. In our experience, this takes maybe 3 to 4 times to get right. One of the advantages of using SimpliVity is that we can oftentimes do a bubble, and then what's called a non-bubble test can take weeks to do. With SimpliVity, because you're able to replicate so quickly, for one client, we were able to compress the bubble testing and the non-bubble testing into one weekend. It was absolutely amazing. So once a successful bubble test has been performed, then we perform what's called a non-bubble test. And essentially what we do here is we will, usually over a weekend, we'll shut down all our production VMs, replicate them over to the DR site, start up the VMs, and then expose those VMs to the outside world. And then routes to public-facing VMs are tested, and external resources are also tested. And then we'll do as much testing as we can for the weekend, and then we'll shut them back down, and then bring up the machines back on the production side. So the ultimate test is a full DR site failover. And we suggest that any company that's serious about doing DR performs this test. So this test, I call it the full enchilada failover. Essentially what it does is it fails over all your production service to the DR site, and then you run in that DR site for a length of time. Usually it's a week or a few days. Then we reverse the replication flow from the DR site back to the production site. That's one thing that usually is not tested. Everybody's so concerned about getting to the top of the mountain to prove that you can fail over. It's like climbing Mount Everest, getting to the top, and then going, okay, I'm at the top, but how in the heck do I get down? So that's one of the things that we'll do is reverse the replication flow from the DR site back to the production site, and then the next weekend typically we'll fail back from the DR site back to production. When this test is completed, we are very comfortable that the DR plan is properly working, the playbook has been properly created, it's been fully tested. That being said, we recommend doing this we recommend doing a bubble test at least once a quarter and a full DR site failover test at least once a year or more often, depending on how your company is architected. So for more information on disaster recovery, you can contact me, Alan Sugano, at 310-541-8584, extension 100, and use the Find This Person Now feature to have the call forwarded onto my cell phone, or you can email me, Alan Sugano, at asugano@adscon.com. Thanks a lot for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon.